You know, I had a stream planned to talk about my own shit. Now I gotta get involved with this fucking leech, this fucking orbiter, this beta orbiter Destiny. Let's see what he said.
Why do you engage with Rob Nor but not Infrared? Infrared also pushes crazy shit, much like Rob, but most of that stuff is based on how true. I think Rob is smarter than Infrared. Infrared is funny, and he seems to know some interesting quips of history, kind of. But he's not very much in this world or up to date on anything recent, and I don't think he's as sharp as Rob is.
Is that it?
How's the spaghetti factory on? Why do you engage with Rob Nor but not Infrared? Infrared also pushes crazy shit, much like Rob, but most of that stuff is based on how true. I think Rob is smarter than Infrared. Infrared is
I haven't really listened to Rob, so I can't judge this.
funny, and he seems to know some interesting quips of history, kind of. But he's not very much in this world or up to date on anything recent, and I don't.
How? How do you know? How do you even know that? How would you know that? What if I am? I'm not in this world. Well, that's what I've been talking about. That's exactly what I've been fucking talking about before you showed me this clip by Destiny. I'm not in this world. What he means by he's not in this world is he doesn't share the same stream of experience as me, right? He doesn't share the same continuity and stream of information as me. He doesn't believe that the established way in which the world is formed before my eyes, he doesn't participate. He doesn't share my world, right? What Destiny doesn't understand is that his world that he's talking about, this world, is not phenomenologically given. And the word phenomenologically basically is referring to the outer experiences that impresses itself on our senses, right? He thinks that when he's going on Twitter and participating on discourse, or when he's turning on the mainstream media and he's listening to what the authoritative voices are saying from the universities or whatever the fuck else, he thinks that this is the world and that's the only world. But Destiny, what if I told you what you're referring to as this institutionalized is contingent. It's not given. It's actually based on a specific institutionalized filtering of the world. It's not the only world. My world has as its center of gravity a different source of potential, right? I have a different source of potential than you. I see as the object of my vision of my world a dormant movement waiting to be awakened, right? I see something that isn't being given expression by the people on TV and all that kind of shit. But you, Destiny, your world that you're talking about is not based on what's potentially or virtually possible. It's based on what is already actual, right? And what's already given to you discursively and all that kind of shit. So when you say, I'm not part of this world, what you basically mean is, I'm not part of, more or less, he's basically just saying, I'm not dwelling within the discourse of the establishment. That's exactly what he fucking means. I think these detached ramblings are what he's referring to with what he said. So, okay, then if you don't want to go into this philosophy shit, I want you in a plain spoken way, and DEZ, you specifically, plain spoken way. Please qualify what he means by me not being in this world. Just give an example. How am I not up to date with the world? How am I not in this world? Because I'm wagering on a third party, right? And the third party doesn't exist right now. Is that it? Go ahead. DEZ. Please just simplify what Destiny's trying to say then. Just explain. Why am I not in this world? Because I'm wagering my bets on something that CNN isn't talking about yet? That long rant you just did was hard to follow or understand. Why don't you have the humility to accept maybe you're just a little bit too stupid to understand it? Is it my fault? Even if it was my fault, you can't just say that I'm not in this world. What does he mean I'm not in this world? How do you know I'm not in this world, Destiny? What is the world? What world are you referring to? Is the world reducible to what you see on cable news? or what you're seeing on the top Google results. Because let me tell you what, Destiny, I want to recommend right now, I'm going to recommend Destiny a book. And the book I'm going to recommend to Destiny is The Black Swan by Nicholas Nassim Taleb. Or Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Right? He's still talking mad shit. Let's see. I want to recommend Destiny the book, The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Because that book's going to teach him that the things that actually come to define our world aren't actually anticipated by the world in the present time. It's always a black swan. The idea of black swan is like the conventional prejudice is that all swans are white. Well, what happens when you find the black swan? Everything changes, right? Well, that's actually what defines history and what defines our world. Marx also believed in the black swan, which he called the proletariat. That was a black swan, right? It was something that he anticipated but wasn't already there. What is he saying?
I had a funny episode where they were talking about how Trump watches, they were talking about his
Fox and Friends or whatever?
Yeah, and they made a bunch of of those ads, those boomer ads, about.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. This is another one. If you knew the book well enough, you could explain it to him. He wouldn't have to read it. Are you afraid to explain it to him, or do you have no idea what you're talking about? Wait. So, why did he write the book then? If all it took was just to explain it. I mean, I probably could explain it to him, but Destiny doesn't see me as an authority, right? But Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book was recognized and legitimated by the establishment itself. So he can't just say that this is a result of my ramblings. Read the book for yourself, and you'll see he's saying the same shit that I was, right? I have to read to him the book. Both chats are talking about it like walkie-talkies.
I guess I haven't had too many negative interactions with Haz, but the thing that hurts is I don't ever hear him talk about current events in an intelligent way. So I always kind of figured that he was more kind of like a thinker in terms of philosophy stuff. But the debate that we did over the third-party stuff was embarrassingly bad. It was just wow. I thought that would be a challenging conversation. It was incredibly embarrassing. I was like, okay.
Yeah, Destiny, this is you being unwilling to admit that you actually were challenged. You're not able to admit it because it hurts your ego so much, but you really were. And you could tell because the debate had you if what you're saying was true, then you should have been extremely calm and well composed the entire debate. But as we could see throughout the debate, you were really nervous. You were talking really fast. You were getting really upset and flustered and angry and shit, right? So if what you're saying is true and that, this debate was a cakewalk for you, it wouldn't have riled you up as much as it did. It wouldn't have made you as nervous as it actually fucking did, right? You can admit that it was a challenging debate, Destiny. You refused to accept it a challenging debate because you refused to accept that your reality or your world can be wrong at the most fundamental level. It can be, everything you think about politics can be wrong. By conceding to me that debate was a challenge to you, you're conceding that everything you think about politics in this world can be fundamentally wrong, right? So of course you can't concede that to me. Everyone saw Destiny slapped you like a 4-year-old at Walmart. No, you're right. He did slap me like a 4-year-old would at Walmart, which is why I had to call his fucking parents, who then gave him a fucking spanking, right? So you're right. He was like a 4-year-old who would come up to me and slap me. But guess what? When it comes to one of the biggest debate lords on Twitch, you expect a little bit more. You expect a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look. This is just dishonest cope. Honestly, it's dishonest cope. If you actually go point by point and actually listen to what each of us said substantively, the ball was still in Destiny's court to respond to my points, right? And that's how you define who wins a debate, actually. It's not about who is easiest to follow. It's not about who panders most to your readily made prejudices about the world and about politics. It's about who, based on some minimal standard of reasoning, address the other person's points, and who didn't address the other person's points. And Destiny did not address or respond to my points. Like, by any standard of reasoning you want to use, the ball was still in Destiny's court to explain why third parties are fundamentally not something people should be investing their time and energy into. Is that it or what? Is there anything more? Is there anything more? Is this the hop-on voice? Okay. Did he? I can join his room, but I don't... He can DM me. I don't know what... He said he's open to chat now. Let me see. Room, but I don't... He can DM me. I don't know what... He said he's open to chat now. Let me see.
Because I'm putting 100%.
Alright, I'll just get on VC. I'll just get in his VC. Hello?
Hey, what's up, buddy?
Yeah, what's up? Sit the hop on?
Minutes with this chat. Sorry. Yeah, oh, you felt like I didn't address any of the points that you brought up?
No.
Did you miss the whole conversation, or?
No, you didn't actually address the substantive
Okay, what
point I
substantive
raised.
thing do you feel like I didn't address?
On the question of the possibility of third parties and whether people should be investing their time and energy in them.
So my answer was you shouldn't be investing your time and energy into a third party, because by doing that, you're necessarily pulling away support from a party that's more likely to agree with you. There's no guarantee that at any point in even the near or distant future, that party is going to become viable. So all you're doing is ceding ground to people that you're less likely to agree with while you try to work on some project for a third party.
Yeah, but that assumes that you can say that that assumes that it is necessarily true that a third party isn't going to be possible, and it
yours
also
assumes that a third party necessarily will be. But I mean, if we look at the data, it's more likely to be correct there.
So as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to politics, there's absolutely no guarantee of anything either way. Right?
Okay, wait, no, stop.
Yeah.
Can we speak in reasonable probabilities?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so reasonably, what's more likely, that a third party will materialize in the next 4 or 5 election cycles or not?
Well, okay, this is why I said you didn't address my point, because I never made...
I addressed your point earlier. You just didn't like what I said.
A third party will materialize on the basis of the actions of the agent for whom this is a meaningful judgment, or a third party will...
Speak in English.
Okay,
will
I'll speak
materialize for an agent of which this is
let me simplify that. I'll go ahead and simplify
No, you don't have to simplify it. Make it make sense, because what you just said was meaningless. Go ahead.
No, it wasn't meaningless, because the question is it going to materialize with or without your participation? And then you're going to make the judgment of, okay, I should help and participate in building a third party. Because I'm not actually saying that it's going to materialize independently of the actions of the people I'm trying to address in the first place.
You're not... Okay, stop thinking in big sentences and big words, because you're missing everything I'm saying. So what you just said, I don't think it's going to materialize without the actions of other people. Obviously, I agree with you, because
without your actions. The people I'm trying to address.
Oh, you. Wait, when you say you, hold on, I'm sorry. When you say you, do you mean like me personally, or you as in like a general listener?
I mean the audience that I'm trying to address.
Okay, yes. So my initial problem, my main contention was that if you take people out of the political system to work on a third party, then they're necessarily going to be taking away support from a party that they would more likely agree with, ceding power to the other party. That was my whole issue.
Yeah, if we accept that the two parties that exist now are the only parties that are ever going to exist, sure. But my whole point was that the only way we could ever have a chance of a third party is if people take that risk.
Okay, but you're asking people to take a massive risk and forego real political power in the hopes that 10 years, 50 years from now, a viable third party materializes?
The reason I consider that reasonable is I think if you ask anyone who's willing to be honest about it, the idea that the current two-party system is going to be like sustainable in the long run, and that it's going to be able to contain America's current political contradictions, I don't think anyone, even establishment
What does long run
ideologists.
mean? How long haven't these two political parties been around for over like 150 years or whatever?
Yeah, but this was the argument I also brought up during the debate, is that if you look at the historical reasons for these fundamental political realignments and rise of third parties in the United States, we are ticking all of the boxes. Like right now, the conditions are right based on the precedent in the past. Like if there's ever a time for something like a third party to arise, because the current two parties aren't able to adequately give expression to the political differences that have arisen, it's now.
Okay, where is your evidence for that happening? Where is the interest for the third parties? Where is that happening at?
So this is another thing you really didn't address during the debate, is that you're making it seem like the third party is the essential thing and not the inability for the current two parties to adequately address.
But I feel like that, but
yeah.
there's not a problem. The two parties right now do address, I think, the vast majority of American thought.
Where's your evidence for that?
Well, if I try to think of like what is some ideology that's not encapsulated by either of the two parties, can you give me some solid examples?
Yeah,
I think
well,
you're confusing
yeah.
confusing like the political gridlock right now for there not being parties that
Well,
actually
yeah, well,
represent American thought.
Sure, but the thing is that I'm actually not thinking of this in terms of ideology. I'm thinking of this in terms of the relationship between the material interests of the various social and cultural formations in the United States and the political forms that are given representation to them. So, for example, this is actually an example of this. If you look at what's going on in New York recently, right? I think this was a week or two ago. You had demonstrations by people from all across the political aisle: Trump people, Black Lives Matter, several others, discontented Democrats that were all marching against the vaccine mandates in New York. And that's not specifically just because they decided to agree on a certain ideology.
Is there a one political party right now you think that is anti-vaccine mandate? Like,
well, I don't think so. Destiny.
This
so
is
when,
like the worst example.
I want to
give,
simplify this. Yeah, I want to simplify this.
Hold on. Stop saying. Okay,
Yeah.
I have to be clear because I'm not letting.
I just don't want you to complain that I'm trying to derail, because it's gonna.
No, I understand. Yeah. I understand, but I'm just trying to keep it clear. When you keep saying "let me simplify this," you're not simplifying anything. You're switching to a different explanation because what you just said before doesn't explain
I'm not.
what you think it does. Yeah,
I'm
okay.
trying to explain why you can't say it's just because of being anti-vax or vaccines. So if I'm a materialist, I'm going to attribute a materialist when it comes to understanding politics, which I am. I'm going to attribute the reasons for why people are protesting against vaccine mandates, not in terms of having a specific anti-vax ideology, but in terms of, for example, a breakdown of the connection between the, let's say, majority of people and the institutions, specifically the state, medical, and it's just, I guess you could just say this general establishment. Like, it's just a breakdown of trust between those two things, right? And the reasons for that breakdown can be understood if you want to go down that route. I don't want you to accuse me of trying to.
So just to
detract.
be super clear, what you're trying to establish here is that there's some thought here that isn't captured by one of the two political parties.
No,
right?
it's not. So that's what I would consider idealism. It's not actually just about thought. It's about the material interests of people. It's not about thoughts.
Okay, you're expressing a material interest that you don't think is represented by either of the two political parties?
Yes.
Okay, so what is your example of that? So it's not just the anti-vax thing, it's one step further?
Yeah, it's an ability to give expression to the American peoples and the American working class, I would say, their discontent with the current political establishment, as well as all of the economic formations that are part of that establishment.
But there were last election cycle, there were two massive anti-establishment candidates. There was one on the left, Bernie Sanders, and one on the right, Donald Trump. How can you say that this isn't represented in either of the main political parties?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't consider Bernie Sanders an anti-establishment candidate in 2020.
Okay, he absolutely was, but okay.
But I do agree that Trump did more or less still represent the anti-establishment candidate, but Trump lost the election in 2020. So as far as what the future of that's MAGA movement is concerned, I think things are kind of up in the air right now. And I do think on the current course of things, there's going to be a huge red wave in 2022, and Trump will probably be reelected in 2024. But I don't think that can be avoided by doubling down with the Democrats. I don't think the Democrats have any chance of being able to stop that.
I don't think any of us can say what'll happen in 2024. In 2022, it's hard to say. Biden's approval is low right now, so that seems to be the course they're headed on. But none of this is evidence for the requirement of a third party or that a third party is going to represent.
Let me put it this way. Do you think that there's going to be a red wave in 2022?
I don't know. Right now, it looks like there could be, but it depends. If the supply bottleneck gets fixed and the economy starts to pick up and cool off.
So I think what I'm trying to say is that whether or not the small number of people I'm actually going to be able to reach between now and then, focus their effort on trying to build a third party and participate in that, is not going to make a difference as far as whether there's going to be a red wave is concerned. There will probably be a red wave, most certainly, no matter
okay,
what.
So what do you think a red wave is coming for? What reason?
I think that the Biden administration, I think that in 2020, a lot of people were on the fence about giving, whether Trump should be removed and giving Biden a chance. But I think now a lot of people's complete rejection of the Democrats and Biden has just been completely cemented. People,
yeah, but what do you think that rejection is based on?
I think it's based on the current the kind of economic and
economic. So
yeah.
Assuming inflation gets taken care of, and everybody is able to buy the shit they want, and the economy's doing okay, why would we assume that there would still be a big red wave?
Well, because the source of the economic crisis isn't just because of one problem like inflation. You're looking at a global supply chain crisis. You're looking at a complete change in the global economic system, and
I don't think we're looking at a complete change. We're just seeing like a pretty historic shift in demand right now that's caused, I guess, like a big supply bottleneck that, I mean, it can be addressed. Like, it's happening. Who knows how long it'll take, but
I don't buy it. I think even the people, the Davos people, I think even they envision that, I know I don't know what your stance is on this whole Great Reset stuff and whether it's a real thing or not, but there are already things that people in power are envisioning for a fundamental transformation of the economy.
Like what? What do you mean?
Well, you kind of complained when I brought it up before, but it's vaguely called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's the new set of policies and the new set of changes.
Yeah, what is this? What policy? What do you mean? Like what changes?
Specifically, for example, in relation to the nature of work and how people work, right? So with the gig economy and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, people are going to there's going to be an increasing merger between people's living spaces, like smart cities and where people buy things from, and their workplaces where it's kind of like a return of factory towns. So we're seeing an integration of for example, in the case of Amazon, campuses, Whole Foods, which Amazon also bought.
Right, but hasn't this been happening for over a decade? Like, how long has there been an Amazon, Google, Facebook campus for their workplace? Also, do you really think this is going to carry over to non-tech jobs, to every type of job, or?
As far as yes, I do. I mean, at least the service industry, 100%. Yes. As far as
so you think people that work at McDonald's or Target are going to be living at McDonald's or Target?
No. They're not going to be living at McDonald's or Target, but McDonald's are probably going to be part of a smart city that might have some kind of degree of private ownership.
We can barely zone for fucking 5-story apartments. How are we going to be building smart cities?
Well, I think the reason I'm bringing this up is because even they anticipate that all of these changes have to occur to overcome the degree to which this crisis is going to pose a threat to the current order of things. So that's their ambition. I don't think they're going to be successful with the Great Reset or whatever, but they see this as the only thing that's going to save. It's not something they believe they can address just with we're just going to curb inflation and everything will go back to normal. They don't even believe there's going to be an ability to go back to normal, like how things used to be.
Okay. I can't argue against this, right? Because this is just a completely, totally unfalsifiable claim. So I don't know what you want me to say, but I guess.
So you're saying it's unfalsifiable, but I'm just trying to make the point that even the people in power don't believe that this is just the current crisis can just easily be solved um, in the way that you're saying it can. I mean, do you?
Okay. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's a matter of whether or not we can up our supply chains to meet the kind of the unique demand that exists today. But I guess we'll
What
see.
do you think is the source of the supply chain crisis right now?
From my understanding, it's that there was because of the types of work that wasn't able to happen over the coronavirus pandemic, and because of the stimulus that's been given out to people, there is a unique shift from a demand from services to a demand to goods. And when all of that money that was split between services and goods before starts going towards goods, you end up with these huge bottlenecks where we weren't able to ship as much stuff around the world as what we previously were able to meet demand because demand shifted so much. So even if the overall global demand is relatively the same, the allocation of that demand to more physical goods has made it really hard for the global supply chain to keep up.
Okay, so what you're basically saying is, and I'm trying to simplify what I heard, right? Is you're saying that there has been a shift from services, the demand for services, to the demand for physical goods. So instead of people spending money for service related goods, I guess is what you mean.
For services, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to accumulate more physical goods, right?
Yeah, that's what people have been buying. Yeah.
So people have been buying more. But one of
More
the
physical goods, yeah.
yeah, so what are the services they're foregoing?
Um, I don't know. I would have to break it out. I'm not sure. Maybe it's like going out getting massages, or maybe it's like buying, instead of buying from restaurants, maybe they're buying more groceries instead of, I don't know, stuff like that. That would be my guess, but I don't know. I haven't seen a breakout of like all the services that people aren't utilizing as much as before.
Yeah, because what is the source of your information on that? That this is
If
this
you
like the main reason for the current supply chain crisis.
Is it the Federal Reserve site where you can see the shift in? Oh wait, I actually saved this shit now. Hold on. Where you can see a shift and change from the demands from goods and services. Are you Haz still on Discord?
Yeah,
Did you get that message that I just
yeah,
sent you?
yeah. I got it.
Wait, did this even work?
No, that didn't work.
Oh shit, is this opening things Oh my god, it saves it locally. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. View online. I imagine you could probably go to the Fred site itself to like pull images like this. But so like these are the main talking points I've heard from economists. This comes from an article that Krugman's written, but you can look at the real personal consumption expenditure for durable goods versus services, and then you can see that like the services like dropped off incredibly hard and durable goods spiked up insanely hard. So
Right,
even if the yeah, go ahead.
but it's kind of hard for me to believe that this is the reason for the supply chain crisis specifically,
Why?
because you also have to take into account when it comes to the supply chain crisis that this is a global this is because of global supply chains and also
Well,
because
yeah,
of the
but
shift in work because of COVID, right? People weren't able to return to their jobs as usual to produce physical goods in
yeah,
other
but it's not a
countries.
matter of just producing the same physical goods as before. We can see that the demand is like far greater than it used to be. So even if those same people had returned, there would still be a supply chain shortage.
Um, yeah, I mean, expenditures on durable goods. I don't know if this would be enough to cause that at a global level, though.
Why? Look, it's almost like 40% higher, 30% higher. Why would it not be?
Let me
Or
see.
maybe if there are other explanations, I mean, I'd be interested to hear them, but
And it looks like it's about 18% higher as of July 2021.
as of July 2021, um, if it was at 100 before and it's at like 118 now, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but that's just for the United States, right? So I don't know if
Real
it's
personal. Yeah, this is just for the U.S. Sure. I mean, it might not be a worldwide trend. Maybe in other countries but I mean, like this would explain like the goods inflation in the United States. But I mean, if we look at this graph, now I'm tying in just stuff that I know in general. So this might be incorrect.
yeah.
But if we look at the graph, we see that it was way higher in January of 2021, and those demand has dropped pretty sharply. So as you said, now it's only 18% higher than where we might expect it to be. But if you
Yeah.
can remember, several months ago, people were saying shit like lumber is going to destroy us. It's at all-time highs. We're never going to recover. And now the price of lumber has come down. The cost of lumber has come down pretty significantly
Well,
too. So
here's the thing. From what I know about the supply chain crisis, the main issue has not been at the level of like the final products, but at things in the supply chain you don't that aren't like that go into the making of products, but also are related to things that aren't really so much about personal, like basic like tools you need to build things like that, things that go into goods, things that are needed for construction, things that are needed for infrastructure, those type of things. And also it also kind of begs the question of, did demand go up because of the scarcity that was already in place, or was it the reverse? Was it the demand first and then? Because I don't think this really measures demand.
this is literally a direct measure of demand. What do you mean?
Because if there was a scarcity of goods, then people would just be having to pay more for those goods than they did before.
Well, but that's what's happening right now. Technically, you can get anything you want. It's just going to cost you a lot more,
Right,
right?
but that
There's
that
not,
wouldn't address the cause of the scarcity in the first place.
well, sure, but I mean, like, if you have, so you pulled the source me on me, so I'll pull that on you. If you think there's a better alternative explanation, then you can feel free to shoot me something and
Destiny
I'll
is
read it over.
clueless.
But like every economist that I've heard talk about this has talked about like this pretty concretely. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Hold on.
Anything else is just like a hypothetical. I mean, I don't know.
I'm looking for it right now.
But I mean, like, you have to understand that, like, if the world can support shipping so many goods and services, that even if that were to increase worldwide by 10%, that's going to be like a huge strain. It's not like you can just ramp up that level of delivery instantly, right? Because if you could ramp it up instantly, then there's a whole lot of waste if it's not being utilized, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Let's say that I'm delivering 100 bottles of milk a day in my truck. Let's say that tomorrow I get asked to deliver 200 bottles of milk a day, right? If I was able to accommodate that demand instantly, it probably shows that I'm being very wasteful when I'm only delivering 100 per day. Does that make sense? Because if I had the capability to do twice as much, why am I paying for all that extra capital just laying around not being utilized? So I think it's fair to say that if there are these big bumps in aggregate demand of goods across the world, 10, 20, 30, 40% at times, then it probably makes sense that, suppliers aren't able to meet those demands instantaneously. It's going to take a few months to get to that level.
No, I know, but it's a matter of the chicken or the egg, right? It's a matter of, is the reason people are spending more because they're consuming more, or is it because the goods that they would typically consume have just become cost that just sorry, the prices for those have increased
Oh. Um, well, why would the prices just randomly increase?
because of scarcity in the goods.
What does scarcity mean?
Like the goods that they want to purchase are not being produced in adequate quantities because of disruptions in the chain of production because of COVID.
Why would that decrease so much the consumption of services then?
Well, the decrease in the consumption of services can easily be explained by the lockdowns, right? And the long-term effect of the lockdowns.
Okay, but then aren't you kind of answering your chicken and the egg thing? If there is indeed a decrease in the consumption of services and people have a bunch of money lying around, aren't all those dollars going to chase the same number of goods? Like, I'm not saying you're wrong when you say scarcity, but I mean, like, scarcity always exists always for everything in the world, right? Except for for everything. Scarcity is like built into everything, right?
No, I know, but the COVID caused unique disruptions in the chains of production and like the ability to produce these goods in the first place.
Okay. All right. I don't. I mean, that's a cool hypothesis. I don't know what to say. If you want to give me something to read, or if you have a paper you publish, I can go over it. But yeah, I don't know what to.
Yeah, I was looking for one. That's why I was asking you to repeat yourself because I was
Okay. Yeah,
trying
knock
to
yourself
find
out.
one.
I'm just playing
But
video games, so.
yeah. I mean, But the main issue here is that you talk also about, speaking of the decrease in the service industry. I think an even better case for, like, if you're trying to say people have more money to like spend on physical goods, well, it's also because they're getting checks to stay at home, and that's actually
I
was
think
a
all the unemployment insurance has dropped off by now, right?
yeah. But at during the time in which this was happening, Biden actually said that this was deliberately because he wanted to tighten the labor market.
Uh, he said that he was paying out. He said he was deliberately paying out unemployment insurance to tighten the labor market.
Yeah, Biden said that the reason is deliberate, and it's to give employees more power in being able to negotiate wages to their employers.
But unemployment insurance wears off.
Well, I can find the exact quote from Biden if you want.
Sure, I'd be interested in reading that because that would be an unbelievably unpopular quote for him to say. As like employers everywhere are trying to find employees, we're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, we're doing that on purpose." Like,
Yeah,
seems like a
yeah.
ridiculous political suicide. But
Let me see. Biden. Market. Was this in the summer? It's surprising you didn't hear about this.
okay, Biden says deliberate employee negotiate labor wage unemployment search.
Okay, is this it? Biden aims to tilt the job market toward workers. This New York Times. According to increasing infrastructure left center scores. Here's Biden. Okay, this week the White House is planning to release an executive order focused on competition policy. One section says several provisions aimed at increasing competition in the labor market. The order will encourage the Federal Trade Commission to ban or limit non-compete agreements with employers that have increasingly used and recently used to hamper workers' ability to quit for a better job. So,
Yeah, that's getting rid of non-compete agreements. Sure, that's not related to the unemployment insurance, but
um,
are you just linking me random stuff?
no, this is what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah. So, do you know what a non-compete agreement is? Or...
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that was contained in it, but there was a general.
Well, yeah, but like, so getting rid of non-compete.
I'm specifically referring to Biden when he was responding to the issues in the job market, like why are jobs so scarce right now, and Biden responded by saying that the reason was deliberate.
Because they got rid of non-competes.
Okay,
I don't know if Biden would ever say that like they're deliberately trying to sabotage the job market. That seems like
he didn't say sabotage, and also this thing about non-competes that you're talking about is only one. It was only one part of the. Sorry, there's a paywall.
Okay, hold on. Apparently, I have somebody that watches your stream on my chat. I'm 99% sure that this is the exact tweet that Infrared is thinking of that he showed in his video when he was talking about this a few months ago. Link it to him and see if he thinks so. Here you go. Instead of workers competing with each other for jobs that are scarce, we want employees to compete with each other to attract work. We want the companies to compete to attract workers.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. Let me tell you something. My sole measure of economic success is how working families are doing, whether they have jobs that deliver dignity. This means we have to focus on wages like we used to. When it comes to the economy we're building, rising wages aren't a bug. They're a feature.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reading on. We want to get something economists call full employment. Instead of workers competing with each other for jobs that are scarce, when employees compete with each other to attract work. Instead of work, when employees to compete. Oh, employers. You probably misspoke. We want the companies to compete to attract workers. That kind of competition in the market doesn't just give workers more ability to earn a higher wage. It gives them the power to demand to be treated with dignity and respect in the workplace. Full employment also means opportunities for workers, including Black, Hispanic. Okay, yeah. So what about this?
Specifically, I'm focusing on the sentence: the rising wages aren't a bug; they're a feature.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, any president is going to want to have rising wages.
But the reason for that is because everyone could see the rising wages were because people had an incentive to be able to stay home instead of they had more leverage in being able to because of the so-called Biden checks, as they're popularly referred to. People had more leverage in being able to negotiate the kinds of wages that they wanted.
Orc, do you know where we stood on this? I know people went back and forth for a little bit, but my understanding was that the final thing is that like unemployment insurance didn't seem like it had a big disparaging impact on people seeking jobs. I'll trust you, Eric. I don't feel like researching all this again. You can tell me if you remember from this.
To be completely honest, I didn't consult much. I don't remember. I think I did, but I mean, it's mainly just being able to like talk to business owners and know what's going on like on the ground. Is that yeah, like throughout the year, they were having a really hard time trying to find people to hire for work. Like people were just not incentivized to find jobs like before.
Yeah, but for a variety of reasons. Republicans try to blame this on unemployment insurance, but my understanding is that when you looked at the states that were cutting unemployment early and everything, that didn't really pan out. It didn't seem like the data supported that.
So is it specifically the unemployment insurance or is it the stimulus? Because I think it's the
Well, the
stimulus.
stimulus was just a one-time payment, right? Those were one-time checks. I don't know how much that put people off working. The big thing, the big stimulus that the U.S. gave out that was fucking huge was the boost in unemployment insurance. That's my understanding. That was like the huge ticket item.
Weren't there multiple stimulus packages?
I believe there were two big stimulus checks that went out. Was it one under Trump and one under Biden, I think? But the big stimulus, somebody check me wrong, but I think the big stimulus was for unemployment insurance was UI. That was like the huge thing that was helping people.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like a boosted. It was like a $300 a week extra for unemployment insurance. It was huge. That's my understanding for what the big boost was. The checks were just like a one-time thing that went out. Like,
Right. So there was a boost in the unemployment insurance. So
Mhm.
so you don't think that incentivized people to be able to like have more of a say in what kind of jobs they want to take up or at what price they would want to take up? Like why is it that wages were rising throughout this period?
There's a lot of weird. Oh man, I have another article on this. So, my understanding is that I don't know how up to date this information was, but during the pandemic, in the aggregate, meaning if you count every American worker, Americans actually took home more money and saved more money than they have historically in a massive amount. But the reason why was because middle class workers, or white collar workers, we could say, were not only able to maintain the exact same jobs they had before, many of them were given coronavirus bonuses, and many of them didn't have to actually go to work. They were able to work from home, so they saved money on transport. They weren't spending as much money eating out on food, and they were getting bonuses still from working through the coronavirus pandemic. That these people were like huge winners when it came to the coronavirus pandemic period. And even though there were retail workers or working class people that lost out, in the aggregate, the gains made by Americans that had those middle class jobs massively outperformed it. So I thought that was where like the rising like take home pay and the consumer consumption and everything was coming from.
Right, but there was also a massive number of people quitting jobs, unable to take up jobs. I mean, it's obviously related to the supply chain crisis. I mean, there was a
I mean,
crisis.
maybe our unemployment is really low now, though, right? Our unemployment is below 5%. Like, I think we're fine in terms of employment. I mean, labor force participation has fallen, but I mean, I think that's always going to happen.
So is
As the
this like
boomers continue to age
a
out.
this month thing, like as of this month, or?
No, unemployment's just been falling. Everybody freaks out about unemployment, but our unemployment's always been like pretty good.
But
generally.
weren't they having trouble finding like truckers to be able
Yeah,
to?
they're having trouble finding workers, but that's like a different like. That's like people arguing that we need more immigrants basically to come into work because we're not like we don't have enough workers.
But they were paying really well. They were like increasing the it's obviously how the markets work, right? If there's a high demand for workers, you increase the wages, and even then, it wasn't sufficient.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to increase wages, but I mean at some point you're only going to have like most industries in the United States run on like pretty thin profit margins. You don't have like you can't just like boost wages a fuck ton. Like a lot of these businesses could become non-competitive. So I mean we might be seeing, if you want to call this a great reset, we might be seeing some form of like reorganization in terms of like which businesses are viable post coronavirus because of the labor force participation, right? That's possible.
I don't necessarily think it's just about which businesses are viable. I think there's been a fundamental change in how people relate to work in the first place. Like, there was a lot of talk of UBI in the past, and it seemed like an impossible dream. But it seems like that is almost inevitable at this point.
Well, because we actually got a little bit of UBI under Biden because of how the child tax credit works. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the basic point is that.
But that's another example of a policy that a third party might have adopted that was co-opted by a first policy.
The
So
child tax credit is not UBI.
Kind of.
UBI is universal basic income, right? And a basic income means if you're a citizen of this country, you get a basic income as a default.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not universal, but the idea that you get a payment every single month from the government for something as simple as just having a dependent, that's a pretty. I don't think that's. I think that's unprecedented in American history. Like, that is a huge first step towards some form of UBI. When you're getting people getting checks every single month from the government for some minimum dollar amount, it's not universal because obviously not everybody has a dependent, but I mean, it's a good step in that
So
direction.
would you anticipate that 1 year from now, specifically, the Biden's approval rating is going to go up
I
by a
can't. I
lot?
can't. The thing is, here's two potential paths. Then maybe the supply chain crisis doesn't actually alleviate because people are continuing to purchase more and more goods and they can't keep up, and then inflation continues to grow, and then the entire working class gets fucked because now things like gas or things that are in the CPI are just unaffordable. In that case, Biden is completely crushed. But let's say in the next like 6 months, the supply chain continues to improve, people can afford goods and services, we got a fuck ton of stimulus, unemployment is really low, the economy is still like pretty hot. Then it's possible that like, yeah, the opinion shifts in favor of Biden, like, oh, this is cool. It's just, but it's hard to say. I can't make those predictions. This is like a macro international econ, big brain thing. Like, people are still arguing over like what the fuck is even causing the supply chain crisis. So I'm not going to pretend to know that I know the answer to when it's going to be over.
Okay, so but you still fundamentally believe that if we are facing a crisis right now, then within the next 2 or 3 or I don't know how many years, it's going to be solvable by like the current two-party system, by the current establishment.
Any crisis that we're facing now, if it's not solvable by the two-party system, I don't think a third party could solve it. I mean,
Right. So do you think that there's no such thing as political novelty in history? Like there's never such a thing as where the the kind of striving of the era is unable to be given expression by the established parties, and that something new is necessary to be able to
yeah,
do
I
that.
mean, novelty definitely happens, but as systems become larger and systems becomes better at like organizing and incorporating new information and processing information and then like turning that into things, I think that novelty becomes like exponentially harder. If we compare it to like coming up with new strats in a video game 20 years ago was pretty easy because like the internet wasn't as popular and not as many people played the game and they were all new and buggy or whatever is one thing. But nowadays, like day one, any game releases, day zero, there's massive wikis up. The chance of you inventing a new strategy are almost nothing. I think the same works when it comes to political
That's
parties or
actually
global
not
economies.
true. I mean, there's authors I actually recommend him. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, his book The Black Swan, and he proves how the more complex systems become, the bigger they become, so to speak. Like the banks that were too big to fail, the harder they fall. The more intensified the points of their blind spots are, where they actually like. It never becomes so complex that novelty becomes impossible. There is always a blind spot.
I'm not saying
Um,
impossible, and but I'm saying the larger these systems become, the more comprehensive they are. It seems like they're good at incorporating new stuff. But I mean, hey, we'll see. But I
but
don't see any right now. There's no reason to think why what you're saying will happen, other than like, well, it could.
are
Like
you
when you,
familiar with Black Swan? It's actually not like a fringe book. It's like
I know the guy that at least at the very least on Twitter, he's pretty crazy. I'm sure his book is fine. You're talking about the mathematician guy, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, I guess we'll see.
So basically, the issue is that systems, especially of the nature of the ones that we're talking about, aren't able to become what he calls anti-fragile. They're not actually able to learn from these kinds of mistakes and integrate them in a local way. They have to like always make it so that when there's one vulnerability, right, one major vulnerability, the whole thing tumbles and collapses.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like it can happen with our current system. It seems
You
like
don't think
our
so?
current system. It doesn't seem so.
Okay.
It seems like our current system is unimaginably resilient. It's one of the biggest, I guess, benefits of capitalism is that it seems pretty resilient, and our political system seems pretty resilient as well.
So wait. By our current system, what are you referring to?
We could talk about like our global infrastructure in terms of like how our governments relate to one another, or we could talk about like our national infrastructure, how our economy functions, or how our government or monetary policy works. I mean, anything like our just our system in general. I mean, we could talk about more specific parts if you want to dig into it, but
So
I
you,
mean,
you think that's like unbelievably resilient, and there's no
yes.
possibility that it could ever
I
collapse.
didn't say no possibility.
Well,
I mean,
there's
there
no
could be something, but
there's no likely possibility.
it doesn't seem to be the case. Yeah, correct.
Why is that? Why do you think that?
I don't know. We keep going through these things that are like unprecedented historical things, and
For
it seems like
example,
The 2007, the mortgage-backed security
I
crisis.
thought you were going to mention that, and I'm glad. Do you know that we actually haven't really recovered from that crisis, and that quantitative easing has been the sole source of economic growth since then? Meaning there's no organic, profit-based, traditional capitalist economic
That's
growth
just
since then?
completely not true. I don't know what else
Really?
to say. Yeah.
So what? So you're not aware of the fact that it is actually government issued credit and stimulus into the economy that has been the source of all of the economic growth we've seen in the United States and Europe since the
Well, let's
2007
just
crisis.
sure. Let's think about that. Let's pull
Yeah,
away from the MMT idea and let's just think like reasonably.
yeah.
Do you really truly believe that over the past 15 years we haven't had a surge of new businesses, new products and services, better technologies, more construction? You really don't think any of that has happened? It's all more or less the same? You really don't think any real growth has happened there?
Well, first of all, there has been economic growth and new businesses and stuff, but that begins and that's a result of the bank issued credit. It's not because of it's not because of a bottom up form of economic growth as in traditional capitalism, which is based on profit. And many of these large businesses, these corporations and so on, operate at a loss in terms of profitability for a long time,
Yeah,
right?
but what does it mean to operate at a loss, though? What
It
do you think
means
that
they're
means?
either not making a profit or they're even losing money.
Yeah, but well, they're not losing money. They're just not making a profit.
Really?
They're just not-
Because there wasn't Uber operating at a loss for a long time?
it's the word loss there is doing a lot of work. To say loss to a layman almost sounds like the money is disappearing, right?
Are you
But
aware of the actual growth of the real economy in the past 15 years compared to the growth on the stock market?
okay, you keep jumping around. Okay, so just to be clear, right?
Well, that's what you were referring to.
A loss on a business sheet could oftentimes refer to a big investment that's made in a business. So, for instance, Amazon had losses as opposed to profits for a long time, but it's not like they were just burning through piles of cash, right? These were capital investments they were making in their business. You know, if you continue to function at a loss, but your revenues are growing and growing and growing, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's not like there's no real growth there. That just doesn't make any sense.
What I'm trying to say is that profitability is not the source of the growth. I'm not saying that there's no growth at all. I'm just saying profitability is not the source.
I don't know what profitability. I don't know what profitability. I don't
Yeah,
know that.
so in capitalism, the engine of economic growth is ultimately based on earning more money than you did before and using that money to invest in your capital in order to expand. And that's how the cycle repeats.
Sure, but you don't need
Expands.
profit to do that
And
necessarily, right?
profitability is determined, or the ability to pursue profits determined by competition in the market, right? Other people are doing things that you have to adapt to, and you have to squeeze out more money from the economy than the other person by lowering prices or increasing the efficiency of capital and so on and so on. So that's actually not what the source of economic growth has been since 2008.
What do you mean when you say economic growth? What does that term mean to you? Or what do you?
It means the ability for the distribution of goods and services to be.
So you don't think there's been a real growth in the overall amount of goods and services produced in the country, or
There
demanded in the
has,
country?
but not because of profit.
I don't know what because of profit means. That's like
It
nobody
means the
thinks that way.
government
Like, what does that mean?
injected. It means the government injected credit in the economy, and that this credit was distributed among America's corporations by the banks, and that it's the recycling of this money that has been the source of keeping the economy in operation.
Okay. I mean, like that's a cool idea. I really don't know
So
what to say.
you're saying this system is incredibly resilient.
Yeah.
Do you think that the current inflation that we're experiencing, as far as the dollar is concerned, is just like a temporary thing, that the currency as we know it is going to continue to operate as we know it?
I don't know I don't even know if the dollar is experiencing inflation at the moment. I don't know if that's true or not.
Okay, so there's no currency crisis right now.
Is there? Is there one?
You tell me. I mean, you don't think that there's a push toward moving toward digital currency and
No,
blockchain currencies
absolutely
by
not.
central
No, there
banks?
is no push towards digital currency. No.
Okay, and is there a time span that you want to like hedge your bets on that for? Is like a year or two or three?
For
We're
a
not
year,
going
it's
to see
free
a
money.
shift.
Yeah. What do you mean? Do you want to bet on whether or not we change to a digital currency in a year or two or three? I'll bet you
Yeah,
anything
if there's
about
a shift to digital currencies within the time span of 3 years.
Yeah, what do you want to bet? What odds do you want?
Well, I just want to know, like, if that's what you believe.
Yeah, I know that. I would take big
So
odds on that,
if
of
there's
course.
no currency crisis, are you aware of what the inflation rate is right now?
In the U.S., it's 6.2%, I think.
When's the last time it was this high?
This might be historically high.
Yeah, do you know when the last time it was?
I don't know.
It was 1990.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So do you know? So you're saying you're speaking of the resilience of the system.
Mhm.
Are you aware of what sustains the value of the dollar?
The full faith and credit of the U.S. government to pay back treasury bonds? I mean, what do you mean?
Okay, but in real life, what is it?
Probably the strength of the U.S. economy.
No, it's not. It's neither of those things. It's
Is it
actually
the
the.
military projection of the United States
It's
to trade
actually
routes around the
It's
world to
actually the
ensure?
denomination of petroleum in U.S. dollars.
Gotcha. Okay, the U.S.
Since the
petrodollar. Okay.
1970s, because we switched from the gold standard to that, right?
Gotcha.
If you know the history of monetary policy in the U.S. So, are you aware of what's going on as far
Hold on,
as?
wait. Okay, hold on,
Yeah.
wait. Okay, this is boring to me now. Do you want to talk about anything else?
Well, I'm just trying to walk you through, and
Well, no. You're doing the like. Are you aware of? And then you're feeding me like every single fucking conspiracy theory I've ever heard in my
it's so
time.
the
But there's like
petro. Wait,
I can't engage with any. There's
So
nothing
wait,
to
wait.
engage
So
with.
the
If you
hold on.
if you want to make a prediction based on your conspiracy theories, I'll bet you. If
Wait,
you
wait,
want.
wait. Is the
But I mean, like, I'm not gonna
petrodollar
sit here and
is
argue that like, oh, QE is the reason
Well-
why the entire economy has grown for 15 years. Like
it,
that's
it
absurd, but,
fundamentally
like,
is
yeah.
the reason. So do
Okay,
you
yeah.
think?
So if there's a bet that you want to place on a future outcome, I'll bet you on digital currency.
Wait. I just want to know
Yeah.
if you think the petrodollar is a conspiracy or not.
In terms of like, is this the only thing keeping the United States afloat in our global economy or whatever?
The dollar that's where the value of the dollar comes from.
Would the implication be that like if we switch to green energy or some shit that like the petrodollar is going to cause the U.S. currency to collapse or?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But I mean, if you want to put money on it or whatever, we can. But
Yeah.
your time frames here are
So
going to be really
I
big.
just
You're gonna
don't
have to go
think you're
5+
aware
years
of the
at least.
history of U.S. monetary
Yeah.
policy, which was very much planned and deliberate in the post-war
Of
period. And
course, it's all planned
is
and deliberate.
well,
Did
it's
the
not
CIA
a.
do
It's
it,
hold
or?
on. It's not a conspiracy. The planners of the
Mhm.
post-war global economy
Mhm.
deliberately set up the world economy and specifically the United States to be a recycler. Or specifically, they first initially wanted the surpluses of the United States production to be invested in other countries, and then they reversed their policy so that the U.S. would become a vacuum of global surpluses through Wall Street, and that this would keep the dollar's value afloat, and that this would keep the world economic order.
Yeah, I remember. It was called like the Philosopher's Legacy, right? The Patriots, didn't they set
No,
up
you
this
can
huge
actually
global
read
fund?
about it in the book, The Global Minotaur by Yanis Varoufakis, the economist. But
Gotcha. Okay.
the
All
point
right.
being,
Well, listen. Hold on.
yeah.
Wait. I super don't care. If you want to make a bet or something about related to any of these things that you believe in, that's fine. But I don't feel like just listening.
All
Like,
right, but you're saying things like how you believe in the resilience of the system, but you don't even know what this system is.
okay. Then bet me on an outcome that I wouldn't understand. If you think there's an
Okay,
outcome that I understand,
within
yeah.
5 years, we are going to see a fundamental change of this collapse of this system and change of the system.
What does that mean? What is a fundamental change?
We are going to see a complete change in the nature of the currency in the U.S. from the current fiat money, purely credit based, and the petrodollar to maybe some kind of digital blockchain currency.
Okay, I'll bet you like $100 on that, or 1,000 if you want, or however much you want to posture, I guess.
No, it's not so much. How about this? I will give you, if you're right, 1,000. But if I'm right, all I want you to do is admit to everyone that you don't know anything about how economies work or the nature of the current global economy. That's enough for me, for you to just be able to admit that.
Yeah, sure. Okay. 5 years from now, if you're still streaming, I'll come for my $100, okay, or whatever.
Yeah. So just
No, actually, hold on. I don't
Yeah.
want $100. I want you to admit then that okay, my shit was all well. I already know what's gonna happen. Is even if you are still streaming in 5 years, I'm gonna come back and be like, oh well, what you don't understand is there was a global shift. You just don't know about it, and it's like in some secret place that like the public doesn't know, but like it actually happened. Like that's all you're gonna say.
No, it's
right?
it's going to be pretty like obvious to everyone.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see you in 5 years, I guess.
Yeah. So is it on this basis that you say I don't know anything about current events? initially?
No, it's just like when I debate conservatives, they've got like all these on the ground issues that they want to argue about. We're debating government policy, we're debating current events, like this is what's going on. If I'm debating like Lauren Southern or Rob Noor, but when I talk to people like you, it's like literally like fucking Jewish conspiracy theory shit now. Like it feels like I'm talking to the Nazis of like 5 years ago.
What?
Like it's just all like off the wall, like
Hold on.
check out this fucking book by blah blah blah, and check out this like the petrodollar is real. It's like okay, like there's nothing for me to even talk about.
Okay,
Here. It's just
so
boring.
first of all, it's interesting that you're comparing the uncontroversial recognition of the petrodollar significance to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. But second of all, I think what you're really trying to say is that I don't actually thrive on discourse based in media sound bites that actually don't necessarily reflect a adequate understanding of our reality concretely. It's just media sound bites. How are you so confident that the things that the media provokes interest in terms of headlines and clickbait titles and whatever, like how do you know that actually reflects what's really going on the ground?
You know what? I don't. So I guess we'll see.
You
in 5
really
years
don't.
if
How
we
much
switch
time?
to, like,
Let me ask you a
digital US
question.
currency. Yeah,
I want to
what's
ask you
up?
another question. How much time did you spend debating about Kyle Rittenhouse?
Quite a bit.
So in terms of what's actually happening in reality, like the changes in our system, in our political system, and in our real economy, how important do you think the Kyle Rittenhouse trial was relative to that?
I mean, elections are won and lost sometimes on culture war issues. The next big one might be over abortion.
Right, but these are all things that you're only aware of because the media is telling you that they're important.
Yeah, but the media is also a reflection of what the people want to see as well. Do you think the media would be showing us this if people weren't clamoring to see it?
Well, people are also interested in Kim Kardashian. It doesn't mean it's an accurate reflection of the reality they live in.
Okay, sure, but what? Okay. All right. Well, hey, listen. I look forward in 5 years to being wrong. We'll have our digital
No,
U.S. currency
I'm
credit
just
card. Okay.
so. But you said that I don't live in this world and that I don't know anything about the current reality because
I'm just saying that, like, at the end of this conversation, like, I'm taking nothing from this. There's not anything for me to read into. There's no future research. You
well,
haven't moved
I
me
know
on any
because
position. Like, it's all just like it's just a
as a
nothing
streamer,
conversation.
you basically thrive off of what's like media clickbait titles and viral
Yeah,
stories.
that's all. Everything
on
that
the internet.
isn't part of your conspiracy world is clickbait. That's right.
But
Everything.
how is
Nobody
it-
actually cares
hold on.
about any of these. None of these issues actually matter. Only what
Wait,
you care about is what matters.
wait,
right?
so
this is
how-
why every leftist
Yeah.
fails to gain any real political support anywhere too.
Yeah.
I think it resembles in like the failure of like any hypothetical third party. Like, oh guys, like you don't. Who the fuck cares about dumb shit like minimum wage or
Yeah.
like social issues? Like
Right,
what's really
like-
important is the petrodollar and how QE is the whole reason why everything is like nobody cares.
Yeah,
about this shit.
and it's like there's no third party because CNN isn't talking about it. So how could it possibly be a thing that
Well,
should be
let me know
talked
once
about?
you've overthrown CNN. Okay.
Well, why should we talk about things that CNN isn't talking about? You're right, dude.
Okay.
And like, unless you see it as the Twitter trending thing, the news trending on Twitter, like it doesn't exist, right?
Right.
So I actually want to clarify something though, because you said that, this is all right leftists. I don't actually think there's no significance to the things that are popular and viral news stories. I think that has to do with the broader culture and ideological war that's going on. I'm just saying that's not exactly the same. That's not identical with an actual systemic and structural analysis of how our economy works and its history, how these structures are held together. I just am insisting on the fact that there's a difference between what the media says in terms of like what it gives importance to in all these headlines and what's actually going on in reality. I'm not saying those things have no importance and no significance. I'm just insisting on that division. And why is that an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory though?
I never said it was an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
Well, why are you putting me in the same category as anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists when I talk about something?
Because it's all like unverifiable, unquantifiable bullshit that relies on me.
You
buying
think the
into, like,
petrodollar is unverifiable and unquantifiable?
If you want to send me some fucking research later on some shit you're talking about, then feel free to knock it out. But if you're just
I
gonna
actually
say, go
want
read this
you-
fucking book, then I'm good on it.
Can you please have a conversation with a guy called Kantbot? He actually does want to talk to you, and I want to
I'll
see
think
if you
about it,
can
okay.
you can hold your own in a conversation about the history of U.S. Economic policy and the petrodollar
Okay.
and so on and so on.
Sounds fascinating. Okay.
Would you be willing to talk to him?
Probably not, but maybe we'll see how bored I am.
Right, but are you sure? Like it kind of seems like you're kind of scared. Or
Oh my god, you fuck shit, you called me out so hard. You got me. It was actually just because I'm really afraid of the guy. Well, now that you impugned my honor, yeah, man, send me his contact details and I'll definitely get back to him, okay? I wouldn't want to be seen as like scared of an internet debate, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's just like there are people who spend their lives researching this
Mm-hmm.
and documenting this, and
Yeah, there are people who spent their lives researching phrenology. I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to make of that, but okay.
well, I'm just saying, like, if you want way more details about this kind of stuff, I
I
would
don't.
recommend you to. I could give you them myself, but
I
maybe you
don't.
need
I don't
someone
want
else.
more details about it. I don't care. If you want to give me people that are making accurate
Yeah,
predictions about
but
the
hold
world,
on,
then
but
I'm interested in that. But
wait.
like,
Hold on,
uh
but what I'm trying to say is, you said it's unverifiable, and I'm giving you a guy who could give you like citations, footnotes, sources, like
I
the
don't want
whole thing.
citations. I want predictions. Give me an accurate prediction based on your model. That's how we judge the worthiness of any model, right?
What
Give me a
have you
prediction.
correctly predicted then in the past
I'm
five
not an
years?
economist. I just read other people's shit. I'm not here to predict anything.
What have
Well,
they
but I mean, like,
correct?
if you're gonna say like, what have I predicted?
Okay,
I mean, I
okay,
don't know. I think
sure.
most of the mainstream things that have happened, I feel like I've been like pretty
So
decently on the
how
right side
much
of.
of those economists predicted 2008?
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at it all. I'm
None
not
of
sure.
them. So
Okay.
how much of those economists that you endow authority to have correctly predicted? Um,
Okay. You know
yeah.
what? You're right. I totally believe in whatever the Kant guy is, the Kant bot guy. Okay.
Wait, but you're
Oh, I predicted the infrastructure bill passing. We had our debate, remember? And you said it would, and
no.
I said it wouldn't.
There
That's one
wasn't a
thing.
controversy about whether that bill would pass. There was a
Uh huh.
controversy about how much of it would pass, and it was a slimmed
Oh,
down
okay.
bill from 1.5 to what 1.3 or 1.2.
Uh huh.
So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't the 1.5 trillion dollar infrastructure bill that you said it would be. But
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
anyway, the corporate
Mhm.
welfare infrastructure bill. I don't know why you're lauding that as some kind of achievement.
Okay.
But
I mean, it was the
anyway,
largest infrastructure bill in U.S. history, but I mean, not good enough for you, I guess. Huh? I'm sure third party would have
hold
done way
on.
better, but.
Again, given the state of infrastructure in the United States,
Hmm.
holding that infrastructure bill is some kind of accomplishment,
Hmm.
given the absolute neglect of U.S. Like that's a given. Governments
Hmm.
giving their infrastructure support is not like some breakthrough of politics.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And by
Okay.
the way, there was no debate about whether it was going to be passed.
Hmm.
But I'm sure this spending is going to curb the inflation that you said they're going to get it under control. So
Do you think the inflation can remain like this for another year or forever?
I think
What
it's
do you?
going to get worse.
Okay.
I actually think it's going to get worse. Would you want to? What do you think about that?
Worse before it gets better. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it'll get better, but I don't know. It might get a little bit worse first. I'm not sure.
When okay, since we're talking about predictions, when do you think it's going to get better? When is it going to start getting better?
I mean, in some cases, it has already. Overall, I mean, I would expect it to within a year. I would think, but I mean, like there are things that could change that. Say some more stimulus goes out or something, which I don't think would happen, or some big spending is spurred on by the stimulus bill, which causes another drive up of demand of certain goods. I'm not gonna say and pretend like I'm gonna accurately predict, but I would feel like
Hold
within like
on,
a year or two, it
hold
probably
on.
gonna
You
come
have
down.
pegged the entire like ability to be an authoritative thinker,
Hold
or
on. To be clear,
you have
I'm not an authoritative thinker. I
hold
just
on, but
read like what economists say. Yeah.
you've decided that all the entire value of what someone says should be judged on the basis of how accurate their predictions can be. You're not even willing to commit to any predictions at all.
Well, because I haven't researched enough on this particular question to give you what I feel is a confident
But
prediction. Because I actually,
you seem confident in saying things like, even though you haven't researched important details of it, that our system is so fundamentally resilient that
because
it
I
is
think historically our
extremely.
system has been incredibly resilient. Yes,
Are you what are you basing that off of?
the fact that we've had two major political parties for over 100 years, the fact that we maintain like a
So
capitalist system, the
historically,
fact
do you
that
think?
the monetary policy has kept inflation and the job market's relatively stable for like 80 or 100 years. Like, I don't know. I mean, what do you want me to say?
Wait, hold on.
What?
You're saying that when even if we were to assume that the two-party system, and this is wrong that it's not, it's been the same form of that two-party system in the past 100 years. But do you
Mhm.
actually think in terms of scale, if there's a precedent of 100 years, that means like it's completely unlikely that it can happen. A huge change can happen in five. Like 100 years in the history of polities and states is absolutely nothing. Okay,
I
so
disagree. I think that time is accelerated quite a bit today compared to what it was 1,000 years ago. Like whole like trends can rise and fall in the course of like a couple years. I think that our scale of time today is greatly accelerated compared to what it used to be, just because of like
as
how
much as the
globalized
scale of
everything.
time accelerates, it also slows down in other ways. So
Okay,
yeah, I mean,
gotcha.
it may so for example, the flux of information has accelerated, and the ability for people to consume information and consume culture and things like that has accelerated. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the scale at which like the mode of production transformed, maybe that's a word you don't like, it really hasn't accelerated all that much. But the
Okay.
question I have to ask you is, you think our two-party system has stayed the same for 100 years?
I mean, we've had these two political parties for 100 years. I mean, their shifts and ideas have changed over time,
We've
sure.
also had the U.S. Constitution since the founding of the republic. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that the Constitution is this resilient document. Okay,
I think the
because
Constitution is incredibly resilient. I think we have the
but
oldest active Constitution in the world.
but what the Constitution represents has not been the same in any given 2 decades, right?
I
So
don't know what you mean. We've
if
changed the
you
Constitution.
have a very vague document, for example, I'm not, this is an extreme example, I'm not saying this is specifically the Constitution, but let's say you write on a piece of paper, I believe that all people should be happy, and you say, well, I've had this piece of paper for 500 years. Well, it's because it's vague, it doesn't actually address the
You
specific
think our Constitution is
particular.
vague?
Of course it's very vague. Wait, you don't
Okay.
think our Constitution's vague? It's very
I mean,
vague,
vague
dude.
compared to what? I mean, what? I mean,
Vague compared to the civil codes of the Napoleonic Code that other countries adopted
yeah,
instead of
probably because
common law.
we have it's a government of enumerated powers, right? So all that shit is left to the states. That's like how our government is set up,
Wait,
right?
I just am really aghast that you would question the idea that the Constitution is vague. Of
I
course it's
just don't
vague.
know how that's a point against the Constitution, or what you mean by vagueness. Like
I'm
it's
saying
appropriately
you
vague, right? If
can't
it's
when we are talking about the resilience of institutions, you have to refer to the institution in its material reality, not vague documents that encompass various different material realities, histories, and institutions. So, for example, I'll make this simple for you. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party have existed for over 100 years, well over 100 years, but who the Democratic, like what, for example, the Democratic Party was made of, the institution that is the Democratic Party, what it represented, who it represented, how the political machine worked and how it operated, how it got votes, all of these things have just fundamentally changed, even as far as a few decades ago is concerned. So the idea that like, oh well, we've still had the Democratic and Republican Party, yeah, but what those parties are at their most fundamental level have changed so much that they've only kept the name.
okay, that is an example of resiliency. But I don't know what else I'm gonna say.
So keeping the name is resiliency, but nothing else.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Why? Why?
Because it hasn't required a complete collapse and reorganization of the system to make something
Wait, but
that's
there
something.
has been a collapse and reorganization of those parties across the past 100 years several times, right? It's just
Okay,
that they've kept the name.
gotcha. All right. I
So
love you,
I don't
buddy.
know
At the
what
same
you're talking.
time,
I don't actually know what you're talking
I
about.
don't. None of us know anything. Okay, or except for you and Talib or whatever that guy, the mathematician dude. Okay, I love you, buddy. All right.
Okay, so I'm still not persuaded, and I don't think my audience is
Yeah, I don't think
persuaded.
anything I can say will ever
As
persuade you. But
as
that's
far
okay.
as the original claim, the clip I was sent of you saying that I don't know
Mm-hmm.
anything about current events or I don't know anything
Mm-hmm.
about the world. I think we've
Mm-hmm.
been over enough to say that you really don't know all that much about the world, right?
I think that's true. Yes, I agree.
So
I can say that. Yes.
make sure you steer clear of those anti-Semitic petrodollar conspiracies because
Mm-hmm.
those are going viral and it's really dangerous on the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
I want you to make sure you stay on CNN, keep
Gotcha.
at it with the New York Times, the Atlantic, and so on,
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure you filter your information correctly and you don't get trapped in these anti-Semitic webs of disinformation. Like, for example, the existence of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency after World War II, because that's a really big anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
That
Gotcha.
yeah.
Well, make sure you save $100 so that in 5 years I can collect. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'll be waiting those 5 years, by the way.
Okay. I'll see you then.
Okay, fine. All right, I left.
Okay.